I am an artist living in beautiful Vermont, USA, and I have a lot of questions. So I engage the minds of the people that I meet. Poets, writers, artists. I explore what's inside and share it with you. My name is Ricky McGeckran, and I am eager to know. I am here today with David Stern. David recently was the co-director of the production Urinetown right here in Bellows Falls. Welcome to Eager to Know, David.
Thank you very much for having me.
And I have to tell you, Urinetown was the first theatrical production that I attended since I moved to Vermont a year ago. And it was exceeded expectations. Not that I had huge expectations. I was attending it with an open mind, and it was fantastic.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, it was. I'm a big fan of the Bellows Falls Opera House in general. I think the space is great. I love going to movies there. But now knowing that the type of production that I saw there is also available made me love it even more.
Me too. I love that facility and being able to work there. It's really a pleasure.
All right, good. Now, your background, you have a Master's of Fine Arts in
theatrical design.
Right. So tell me about what that is. It sounds like there's a lot to it, or I would like to know what are the components of that.
Yeah, I imagine there's a lot to every MFA degree. The theatrical design, most people that I know went in one direction or another. They went toward scenic and lighting or toward costumes. Very few people sort of did everything.
Okay.
I focused on scenery and lighting, although everybody's required to do a little bit of all three.
Okay.
So all of them sort of in production have a major place in the design and visuals of the production. So I was always excited by, the real truth is, directing's always been my passion.
Okay.
And when I was seeking a degree, I didn't want to run around the world. I wanted to have a family, and
Okay.
I felt like theatrical design as a degree would be a stabler place to work out of. And I think that turned out to be true. One of my first jobs out of school was as a designer at the New England Aquarium. So I designed stages for fish.
Wonderful.
But anyway, it was an interesting, because they don't make aquarium design degrees.
Well, the New England Aquarium, for people that don't know, is fantastic. Like, the design of it is incredible. It has this, because I grew up in Boston,
Yeah.
and the New England Aquarium was always one of my favorite places to visit. And it has this cylindrical main tank in the middle with a spiral around it. And then the whole aquarium is kind of on this tray of water. It's fantastic.
In which the penguins and it's amazing. Now I didn't do anything to make that happen. Right. That was already there.
Right.
All the changing exhibits are,
Yeah.
of course, the outside exhibits. But you should find one day a way to get to the aquarium at night.
Okay.
And get in there, because all the lights are on and it's quiet and there's nobody. That's when it's amazing.
So I believe I have been there. Watch your hands.
Oh.
I believe I have been there for a work function at night.
They do functions.
Would have been
anyway,
night.
It's beautiful. Yeah, I don't mean to steer us way off.
No
but
problem.
for me, I studied scenic and lighting design, and it has stood me in good stead. It gave me a much rounder way to look at creating a piece of theater.
Okay.
And
now, you said that you wanted to be a director. Now, was that something that was inspired by? Did you want to be a director of live theater or a director in movies, or just
live theater?
It was always live theater for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So where did you get exposed to live theater, and when did you think that is something that makes me happy or looks really interesting?
High school. Yeah. I was on the 5-year high school plan.
Okay.
I was sort of tanking. I'll spare you all the psychosis and all of that. But I had struggles. I eventually went. Nobody I had ever known went to boarding school, but I was sent to boarding school. I found it terrifying, and then I got there and I found it much less terrifying. And I really got into the theater, and I had never really been exposed.
Interesting. What age was that you got into theater? What grade?
16, 17.
Okay, so you were sort of struggling with having interest, I assume, in academics and math, science, and all of that stuff.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I mean, I was smoking pot and
Okay.
skipping classes and
Okay.
going to. I mean, I had lost my relationship with learning, I would say.
Okay.
But
Would you say when
and
you
theater helped me really rediscover that.
now would you say that theater helps you discover a relationship with learning? Like, did you think of it as learning, or looking back on it, or was it just another part of your brain that wasn't learning? It was just experiencing and creativity.
I think in high school, well, it was always really challenging, but it was fun, and the people that were doing it were fun, and it was
Nice.
expressive, and I I wonder if it was the community around it that may have been some of the most exciting. You know, these are very open, communicative, interesting
Yeah.
people doing things together. You know, we weren't the ensemble nature of all of that, which to me is really what draws me most inexorably to the theater, that it's an ensemble art form.
Huh. It's so interesting that you say that, because I've spoken to many people who are involved in theater, and I'm always asking people how they got into it, and usually it's about a sense of community that drew them to it, which is interesting.
Yeah, I think that's still what we are substantially about at Wild Goose Players,
Nice.
is building the community of the company
Yeah.
and extending that into the community of the larger community.
Yeah. So let's talk about Wild Goose Players. So what is your role in Wild Goose Players?
I'm
What
the
is it?
executive director and founder.
Okay. And so you said it's a company.
It's a theater company.
What is a theater company? What does that mean?
A group of people that do theater together, effectively. And it's not that none of our people do theater elsewhere, but they definitely do theater with us.
Okay. And the people that are involved, they're not just actors, I assume.
No, we have a large set crew, probably 10, 15 people, costume crew, real major leadership in costumes, in lighting, in tech, in carpentry, in fat textiles in a larger sense, stage management people. I mean, it takes a lot of people to do a
Yeah.
show like Urinetown.
Yeah. Now, it sounds like you probably are dealing with different personality types. You would have the personality type that would be the actor, the personality type that might be a lighting person, but everybody has to work together. Is that an accurate
Yeah,
estimation?
yeah. And I think one of the things that's interesting about performance is that it's kind of an unsafe, it feels unsafe as an activity. I mean, the more you do it, the more habituated you can become to revealing yourself, to doing silly things, to being but many people have a lot of anxiety about performance, and it's probably the biggest inhibitor of the quality of work. And so the safer the company, the more collegial, the more supportive, the better the work.
Okay.
That's an opinion statement, but I think most people in the business would agree with that opinion.
So it sounds like you probably spent a lot of energy or focus on trying to make it a safe place.
Yeah, but I think it's very interesting. I am manic about rehearsal, so I absolutely wedded to working to build something that, you know, looks well rehearsed. Like
Yeah.
I would say Urinetown, by and large, people looked like they knew where they were going and
Oh, yeah.
they went there. and they knew what they were singing, and they knew, the lighting was where it's supposed to be. Um, I think that we were talking about safety and
Yep.
yeah. Um,
Well, and the reason why I asked the question is when I think about a director or in a, that's not something that I would have ever had thought of. So when you mentioned that creating a safe space, that seems so interesting to me.
yeah, I just think, first of all, it holds people. I think the competitive, um, it is easy to lapse into a more competitive than supportive framework.
Okay.
And it's easy to see people struggling and talk about it in ways that are unsupportive. But really, the more we can make a space, first of all, you build the habits of more positive communication. But people just come and they stay and they are open. Um, that's the most compelling thing to me. I don't want to pretend that I do that. It's also really ephemeral and hard to shepherd communal relationships.
Okay.
I mean, how is it really going? How do we know how it's going? What are the markers? I mean, people, how but I think it is really important. I will say, when I sort of self-critique, I had a colleague who was one of our music directors who worked with us for a long time. And one day I was talking about how much I like to rehearse, which is where I was going with that other thing. And he said, "Are you sure that if you spend a little more time on ensemble building and a little less time on rehearsal, you wouldn't have a better show?"
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that.
Okay.
I think it's very time spent, at least when you see that time is needed to communicate because something's built up or whatever, you better take the time.
Okay. No, it seems like a big part of putting on a production like I experienced of Urinetown, there's obviously the creative element to it, but I feel like there is a big part of it is logistics and sort of like the project management side of things. Is that a big part of it for you? Is that something that you like, dislike?
Um, I think most people, as I hear the voices of the people in my company, I imagine they would say that that is not my favorite material.
Okay.
There's a ton of it. Financial management, all the bookkeeping, all the receipt gathering, all the program creation, all making sure everybody's bio and everybody's headshot and everybody has a whatever they need. And I do have a lot of help with that. We have wonderful stage managers, and just the whole crew really is given major responsibility over major areas of responsibility.
Who oversees everything?
I do.
So it would be you. Okay. So
It
it
would
would be
be
you.
Yeah, and sometimes that feels weighty, and it also feels like a privilege.
Okay.
I mean, to have people trusting you with that, or not,
Yeah.
but I'd like to hope at least at
Yeah.
some level.
So I'm a full-time artist painter, but I used to have another career, and my previous career is I was a project manager for digital experiences like e-commerce websites and marketing websites and stuff like that. And what you're describing, it reminds me very much of doing that because I would have to work with all sorts of different skills. Like I would have to work with the visual designers and the copywriters and the information architects and the developers, the people actually doing all the programming. And all those people have very different ways of communicating, different ways of how they perceive a problem. And there's an element of being a project manager like that where you kind of have to have a consensus and it's about making people feel heard and all of that. It's not just about getting all the results. So it sounds very similar to what you are describing.
Yeah, and sometimes the people it's not that they perceive each other as adversaries, but you have a costumer and a choreographer, and the choreographer can make choices that make the costume that the costumer is creating not work.
Absolutely. I
And
can see
vice
that.
versa.
Yeah.
So that kind of interdependence where, if it's going to work, it can't be about what you want on the person or what you want them to do movement-wise. It has to be a look at what's going to enliven the show the greatest amount. How will we preserve the beautiful thing we're trying to make?
Wonderful. It sounds like Wild Goose Players has spots, so to speak, for people with, experience, but there's also opportunities for people that may not have that much experience. Is that accurate?
So I was writing literally that sentence in a grant today, just because for Urinetown, I was actually disappointed, to be honest with you. The show had 36, 37 people in it, but we were going to take everybody. It seemed to me a show that could withstand, those crowds, the mob of they could have been bigger.
Yeah.
And
So you were disappointed in the fact that the crowd wasn't as big.
well, in the amount of people who came out.
Oh, I see.
We
Okay.
used everybody, and that's me saying there are shows that we create with an eye toward using everybody,
Yeah.
so that really anybody can get a taste of it and come and play and find out what we do, and not every show can or should be like that.
Right.
Some shows, there are always new opportunities, and especially if you want to learn how to scene paint or do lighting or those are. We need help
Yeah.
in those areas, and anybody who really wants to know them legitimately and is going to be very valuable to us. But performance-wise, also, we're trying to build a company
Yeah.
of people with skills,
Okay.
and so it's great to have them all, and the community. If what I said earlier, that the community is the center of it, then really reaching out as much as we can makes perfect sense.
Well, this sounds like a nice opportunity for someone that's looking for a sense of community and connection, regardless of whether they have acting experience or really even interest. They could be part of a production.
Absolutely.
And I don't just mean here in Bellows Falls, because people listen to this all over the place. So I think that looking into community theater for people is something that could be really a unique way of connecting with people.
I agree. And I think regardless of the level of quality, you can find camaraderie and community theater has a mixed name out there. We work very hard to produce works of excellence that fulfill us not only by being together and having a fun time and making nice, cute theater,
Right.
but by really seeing what we're capable of as a group of individuals brought together. And I do think that's unusual and a little exciting.
Yeah. Now, obviously, you're using a play as a starting point that someone else wrote, that you didn't write it. How do you know that you are on track for, when you're producing this, to be creating something that lives up to, what the playwright wanted for the vision? Like, how do you know?
Well, first of all, we don't know.
You don't know.
I mean, I don't know what the playwright. All I get's the text. Sometimes you can get.
Yeah.
But
So
my job is to do the very best production I can see.
Okay.
Really, and I take pretty big pains to not watch videos, to not go on, because I want to let my juices gestate when I'm looking at work. So our production of Urinetown is fairly unique.
So you would look at a play and you would read it and you would have a vision in your head of how this should be expressed on stage, and then that's what you're you're going towards, as opposed to, as you mentioned, you're not looking at videos and stuff.
Yes, but I would say really I more stumble slowly toward a vision. So I'll read it, and then 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 we'll start designing it, and I'll make a model of it, and I'll keep thinking about it. Then we'll get into rehearsals, and people start doing things, and I'll be seeing them and going, ooh. And I find that I start to really understand a show that I've never done before, like Urinetown, in the last month. And I will start to really know where we're going. And the hope is to not waste much time and to be stumbling in the right direction-ish. But, I don't feel like I get some crystal clear voice from the heavens. And I do want to say we will have done 3 original pieces in the last, in a year. And we do an incubator, which is workshop for dramatists who want to come and share a script and get a live reading and get feedback. And we have shows that are coming out of that this fall that we're doing. I think it's going to be 2 new shows, which is very exciting for, a little Bellows Falls company to be producing new original work.
Now, if someone, what kind of background would, what is the criteria for someone to submit a play? Nothing. So anyone who...
Because sometimes you find those people who have no resume producing wonderful work. What we will do is take the script, give it a read. If we really don't think it's ready for the incubator, meaning, because that's an invited audience, we prepare the whole thing, people come and learn it and read it. If we don't think it's ready, we'll gently and lovingly say, this might not be ready.
Yeah, it's not ready. Okay. If it's not ready, it's not ready.
And here's why.
Right,
ideally, so that we're not just saying no and not giving anybody anything. But
and people can go to the website. Is it wildgooseplayers.com if people are interested in that. So watch your arm.
Yep, and we do have people coming. There's another new reading coming up in the first weekend in June, I think it's going to be.
Okay, great. I know that there is some sort of music festival coming up. Can you tell me about this?
Yeah, we are very excited. Wild Goose Players is partnering with the Bellows Falls Rotary. We are on the same weekend of what used to be Roots on the River, which was a festival started by Charlie Hunter and then shepherded by Ray Masuko. We felt sad that the region had lost a beautiful music festival. We're looking to bring back music. Not that there's none, but why not have a summer festival on a weekend when there used to be? So June 10th, we have the Mammals coming and Sarah Borges and the Broken Singles and a number of local bands and a couple of surprises. Wild Goose will do a number. So we're very excited about that.
Is there going to be like a stage setup or something?
There will be a little stage for our number. I mean, I think the Mammals and so on, they just want a nice place to play.
All right.
But we want to do something crazy. So.
All right, so June 10th.
June 10th. Write it on your calendar at the Waypoint Center.
Okay. All right. Excellent.
Thank you so much.
David, thank you so much. This was great. You and I had never met. We met out in the hallway for the first time, and I feel like I've known you I feel like I didn't just meet you a half hour
Easy
ago.
Easy banter. Well, thank you.
You're very welcome.
A pleasure.
My name is Ricky McGuckran, and you have been listening to Eager to Know, the podcast. If you haven't already, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join me next week for another Eager to Know podcast.